Hello, everyone. Welcome to CrowdCast with Marty, Tate, and Brent, Brague. We're going to be diving right into things. It's been a few months since we've been on, so Brent and I have a little catching up to do, I guess. But so just by way of announcements, we're going to obviously continue with the webinar podcast. We're going to, over the next few months, make a few changes. We're going to have we plan to invite other industry experts to join our conversation, marketing people, advertising, platform operators, experts in the field. So that's something that we're working on and looking forward to. And we'll continue with the way that people can ask questions of these experts, and so it will expand beyond just the knowledge that legal expertise and the expertise that Brent brings, and we're looking forward to that and have a good number of experts that will be joining us, like I said, over the next several months. And I'm dropping this on Brent, so he's going to give me a surprise look. But next month, instead of the third Thursday, I was going to see if we could go the fourth Thursday. So I think
quite possibly
the 28th.
Well, we'll have to stay tuned to see when it gets announced.
Yeah, so look for that one. Sorry, Brent and I haven't talked this summer at all, so this is a little bit of a catch up for us too. So
starting there, Marty, how's your summer been?
It's been good. So yeah, things have been really good, really busy, which is good. But it's been trying to juggle a few vacations and which just ended up working and work. So things are good. How about you?
Much the same. I was able to drag my laptop with me all over the world as I entertained the wife and kids, but it was a great summer thus far. As it relates to crowdfunding specifically, it looks like there's a couple new regulations as it relates to Reg CF, a couple tweaks that happened a couple months ago, where they gave us another $70,000. Instead of raising $1 million, you can now raise $1,070,000.
Yeah.
Why don't you high level go over what those nuanced tweaks were to the regulations? And
they're really just inflation adjustments. You started talking about new regulations, I started panicking, saying, "Oh, did I miss something?" Just inflation adjustments so that the minimum amounts that can be raised were increased. I think it's now $1,007,000 that can be raised, and the amounts that investors can invest also went up that same percentage. So those minimum amounts that investors could previously invest, now those have been adjusted accordingly to take into account inflation.
So we currently have a lot of clients, CrowdEngine does, going through the Reg CF approval process. We have many more prospective clients looking to do the same. What insight can you share from your viewpoint from the clients you're working with about the FINRA approval process? How's it going? Just kind of the state of the union with FINRA, I guess I'm looking for, as far as what should be their, as of August 2017, what should be the expectation of how difficult, how easy, what should I plan for, and how do I prepare?
So I think that FINRA is getting up to speed. It was interesting because, and I think we spoke to this months ago, but right when Regulation CF and platforms and stuff, when that went online, there were several in the queue. I think that were approved immediately. There were a few that were approved there shortly thereafter. I think that FINRA was under some pressure to get those approved. They didn't really know what they were looking for or what mattered to them at that point. So I think you saw a number of platforms get approved. In my experience over the last 6 months, I think FINRA is getting better with their systems and their checklist of what they're looking for. I've even seen an increase. What I perceived, I haven't done a head count, but I've even seen an increased number of examiners. It seems like every time we make a filing, I'm dealing with somebody new, which I think is good. That means they're staffing up. But the process like I said, and through it, I feel like I'm getting smarter and understanding better what FINRA wants. I feel like before it was just you tried to read the tea leaves and the regulations and say, here's the application, here's what we think you want, and we'd file, and there was a lot of back and forth, and I know that created some frustration with clients. Why didn't we? But I don't think that we understood initially what they want. Now I'm feeling like I have a much better understanding just with every application that we're providing.
You've seen consistency from them as far as what they're saying, so you don't have one person way out in left field, another person way out in right field, and both wearing the FINRA badges now becoming a more congruent request for information or congruent request for configurations and attributes that are now being from one portal to the other. Because before, I know in the first wave, I was scratching my head, how did they get through with that configuration or compliance structure? Just going, did they change after approval? Or how did this even happen? And now I see it much, from my viewpoint, I see much more consistency. But I'm not on the front lines the level you are. Yeah,
and it's consistency. I really feel like, and maybe one of the examiners actually alluded to this, I feel like they have a checklist now. Like I feel like here's the items they look for, whereas before if they had one, it wasn't as well developed.
It was on the back of a napkin.
Yeah, and so for example, they one of the questions on the application is to provide, you've got to provide a list of the members or the shareholders of the funding portal, and you have to also provide records of investments made into the funding portal, which the first level is just, and they ask for bank statements from both the originating bank and the receiving bank. So they want to show if it's, $100,000 investment, they want to show it going from this account into this account. And the documentation, whether if that's a loan, whether that's a equity investment, they want to see all of the paperwork that goes along with that. Where they've evolved is they really want to know they want to know the origin. They don't want it just to be, okay, we see it went from here to here, that's good. They want to see, okay, well, how did it get to the first bank account? How did it get there? So, we've been able to advise our clients and say, okay, we've got to get pretty granular back to, they want to trace it back. And I think there's what FINRA is doing is they're wanting to understand all the parties that are involved from a compliance, bad actor, but one of the concerns they're trying to address is obviously, the portal, its affiliates, its owners, and so forth. The operators of the portal cannot do any of their own deals. They can't be equity holders in any or have any financial interest in the deals that are on the portal. So I think they're trying to make sure that all of the dots are connected so that you don't have somebody going through multiple entities to try to get around that.
We've spoken many times, you cannot be a direct issuer with a Reg CF portal. Are you able to be an investor if you're a Reg CF portal owner, can you invest in the deals on your portal?
So you're prohibited from having a financial interest in that. So my response would be no. I wouldn't advise that because then you've got a financial interest. The interesting thing about that, though, where it's a bit of a contradiction, is the portal can take, as part of its compensation, equity in the deal. So they can't invest in the deal, but they can.
You can't purchase more equity, but you can negotiate equity.
You can receive equity. So that's a little bit of like you said, a contradiction there, because you are allowed to actually have a financial interest as long as it's just paid as compensation for your services. So,
did you have a chance to listen to the FINRA webinar a few weeks ago?
I didn't.
To hear it, and it was interesting because on the part of that webinar, they went over some industry statistics, and they said, since Reg CF has been in law, there's been about 80 successful raises for a total whopping of $34 million raised, which creates an average of $350,000 per successful raise. I see that as a horror story. After a year and a half, we could only kick up the $34 million in investment, and even then, and so I thought it was interesting because while I still am a strong believer in the power of Reg CF, I don't think it's time yet to put all your eggs in that basket and be dependent on that. If your model is taking a couple startups or and living and dying with the ability to promote startups, because while we see some people having limited success, you look at the pure volume of amount raised, and it just isn't substantial yet. Right? It's not significant by any measure. It's like, wow, I would have expected that, in the first quarter, not necessarily the first 18 months that we're kind of approaching.
So yeah, it's interesting because I saw that same statistic someplace, and I can't remember. I think I actually had it. How many there? This was as of like May. How many had been filed? 300. Yeah. So over 300. It was like 325 as of the middle of May. So we're probably still maybe 400 or something at this point. And so I think, you're the percentage of that. I mean, you're less than, you're 25% that are actually getting funded. So that to me, the dollar amount doesn't bother me as much because I still think of it as like they're raising $325,000. That's a friends and family round. And
it's a good seed round.
Yeah, a seed
round.
For
many clients.
Yeah, and that's what it was designed to do. I know that there's this push, we got to raise the limit, and there's some people that could do it. I mean, I have a client that did an overwhelmingly successful Reg CF round. They had to stop it at, they were raising $500,000. They were oversubscribed, and they're planning on doing another one.
Yeah. So
and going up to that $1 million. So I think there are people that are successful. And it goes back to that. Something that I said before, what's going to be a successful crowdfunding raise? I still think it's the things you can touch and feel, or it's going to be local. It's going to be something you say, oh, I know that place. I'm going to go. I'm a customer of that group or that restaurant or that bar or that brewery or whatever, so I want to invest in them. Or it's a product that a consumer product that people can get their heads around.
Well, I think you're right. To me, there's a couple of things. I think many people thought access to the investment would equal investment. If we give the people the ability to invest, they would naturally invest. And I'd point to Apple or Google. How many Google users are not shareholders of Google? How many iPhone owners or laptop owners are not shareholders of Apple who are quote-unquote retail investors? So it's not merely familiarity, liking the brand, and the ability to invest in it motivates the person to invest, right? There's another piece. So I think there's a couple things working specifically in the Reg CF where I do believe it's a viable tool. Obviously, I'm in the industry. I believe it's the future. I always hesitate when people come to me and say, I'm putting all my chips on the Reg CF table, and I think they fall in love with the concept without the business model to, okay, so how are you going to pay your mortgage next month? Right? So how is this really going to work, and are you prepared to fight that battle? And that's where I want to make sure our listeners, I know from experience, I talk to people that can absolutely execute a Reg CF portal and with the expertise and know-how. And I talk to a greater number that are ill-prepared to execute a Reg CF portal, but are just as excited to. And so I say this more to the people that don't have a lot of industry expertise, that don't have all the wherewithal to execute a lot of these steps that, quite frankly, are essential for success. And if you're going to dabble, I would say dabble in Reg D before you jump into the Reg CF pool, because if you can't execute a Reg D raise, I don't think the Reg CF is more strategic in my mind than the Reg D.
Yeah.
I think Reg D, you have a little more forgiving both on the guidelines, and then also the marketing and a lot of other aspects that make it more favorable and more easy if you're going to execute a business model to be able to execute that. And I think that's why I keep poking out that bear, is not that I don't like Reg CF, even in its current form, but I don't think most people are ready to execute that business to the level it needs to be done.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. I think that, again, I believe in it. I think that it's something that you're getting a lot of sort of negative pushback, and just even what you're saying. Well, it's, they've only raised $32 million or whatever, but it's still $32 million that's been raised. I think that there is a slow, and you and I have speculated about this in multiple conversations about. I just think there's a slow adoption period, and it's an interesting thing because, I think it took people, and maybe this is apples and oranges, but it took people some time. Let's say, for example, E-Trade or some of those, it took people time to adopt that. And they said, well, no, I want to be able to go down and shake the hand and look in the eye of my broker and know he's taking care of me. Before people, it took time to adjust to that. It took time for people buying online, and now that's the only way it's done. I think it will take time, but I also go back to for people just to be retail buyers. But I go back to something I said multiple times in multiple forums. I think there's, in part, the regulations make it difficult. Also, there's just people just aren't, and I like to invest, but I don't go to I have yet to go to a WeFunder and just say, cool, let's see what's out there. And I probably should, I've done it with some real estate platforms, but that's just not something I do, and I don't know. I think that market has to be created.
I think there needs to be success stories
to
drive it, because until my neighbor buys a new car because of the investment they made, or a new boat, or it's until I feel I missed out on something, I don't care.
Yeah.
But the second everyone else got in on it and I didn't, now I'm searching. Now I'm not going to let the next one go by. I'm not going to let my chance to get to keep up with the Joneses. But right now, there's no significant home run yet. There's a couple singles where 34 companies raised the capital. They got on base. That's great. But until one of those 34 or one of the new ones coming up actually makes it home and their investors get paid out a good return, however you want to define that.
Yeah.
That's what's going to start motivating more people, both from a businesses looking to raise capital from this method, and then investors looking to grow their capital as well.
Yeah, well, and that's why I think you saw the success from real estate deals, because people could immediately, first of all, they could do debt. So you would do a short-term debt, and people were able to wrap their heads around it and say, oh, look, I'm lending against this apartment complex in Ventura, California, and it's a 12-month loan, and look, I got my money back, and I made, 9% or whatever it was. And that story started being told. But you're right, most of these people are investing equity, not even just, they're investing pure equity or a safe, which is, anything but in my mind. But they're using these instruments, and they're really counting on that exit. And you're investing in a seed round, that you've got 5 years before a viable exit. Now maybe there's going to be those stories that just the astronomical rise, but for the most part, you've got if the crowdfunding round's coming in as being your seed round or your friends and family, then you've got maybe a later stage seed, and then you've got an A round and a B round. If it's going to follow the typical venture capital model, or you've got a Reg A, offering that will come on the back of that. But any of those things are going to take time. And you're right. As soon as there's that success story, I think that you'll start to see changes in it. But I still think that it's something. It's something that's there. It's something that and and it will. I think it will continue.
The world's a better place with it.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I don't think we want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I just want to caution people before they throw all their chips on this one particular offering type as the be-all, save-all, that they understand different dynamics about it, that it's a great start to something great, but it's not easy sailing at the moment, both from a approval process and the market willing to just jump on board and run with it. Now, can portals who enter the marketplace change that? Absolutely. Will they? Absolutely. Which portals will do that? I can't tell you, right? But we know from historical perspective, who was Amazon before they came big? It's always just that, the dreamer, but then they replaced the new price. So there will be newcomers into the marketplace that will replace the traditional 800-pound gorillas. Here's a couple questions that we're getting from our listeners. What are the pitfalls associated with allowing others to place or place deals on your crowdfunding site? So what are your liabilities by allowing third-party issuers to raise capital on your crowdfunding site?
Well, so let's. It depends on the type of offering you're doing, obviously, and who you are. If it's a Reg D, 506C platform, you do have liability. It depends on how you're marketing yourself.
And you're structured. If you're a broker-dealer or investment advisor or a marketing portal or a direct issuer.
If you're just like a bulletin board marketing portal where you're basically just plopping deals up there, you have a better argument that your liability is less because you're saying, hey, we're not curating these deals. These aren't
There's no underwriting.
selected. We haven't underwritten, and I would make sure that your website is full of all those disclaimers. You're really just trying to facilitate these transactions, and you're providing a listing for them and getting paid a listing fee, not a commission or anything like that. Statutorily, as a funding portal under Regulation CF, you do have liability. You have liability to do background checks on the issuers. You have to understand who they are. You have to ask certain questions, receive certain information. You have to know who they are. So there's risk and liability in that. You can't. So that's something to be cautious of. And similarly, if you're doing, you're like a start engine or something and you're doing Reg A offerings, they're going to say they're not curating. But you have to, I think there's just a general common sense level of due diligence on who you're looking at and what you're doing. Those, a Reg A and a Reg D, those aren't really regulated. If you're not a broker dealer, those are not regulated mediums. So you sort of have to go back to sort of common sense rules of what due diligence makes sense, but you're not regulated to do that. Most of those use a broker dealer. They're regulated. They're going to be doing all sorts of.
And it also depends how you pay yourself, right? If they're paying you to be a marketing billboard or bulletin board, what have you, and that's all they're paying you for, that's one thing. If they're paying you to provide services that within those services are, liabilities, then you're going to take, because you're paid for those liabilities, and usually those services require licensing, such as to be a broker-dealer and or investment advisor to perform those duties appropriately. And so usually, unless you're getting paid strictly for marketing purposes, you'll need a license to execute a third-party capital raise, and based on that license, you have liabilities appropriately for that professional service you're providing. If you're an owner of a Reg D 506C platform offering opportunities to existing contracts to place their own deals on the platform, what fees can the owner assess on deals that don't belong to the portal owner? So this is kind of the same flavor of there's a need for a third party person coming. Basically, they're saying, what fees can I charge if someone's posting it on my portal?
Okay, so this is a licensed funding portal, correct?
506C.
506C. Oh, 506C. I'm sorry. What fees can you charge? Again,
it's which hat you're wearing, right?
Yeah. Again, if you are simply a listing service, a bulletin board, which is really all you can be without being licensed as a broker-dealer, then you can charge, listing fees, which is basically I'm going to charge you a fixed fee to be on the platform. Now, people say, well, can that be a fixed fee that's on a sliding scale based on the amount that they're raising? Well, I said, no, that looks like a commission to me. I suppose you could have various tiers, but the key to that is it can't be contingent. It can't be a commission. So if you can convince somebody that, yeah, you're doing $1 million raise on my site and it's going to cost you $50,000, regardless of whether you raise that money or not.
Or it'll be $500,000 if you're going to raise $100 million.
Yeah, or whatever.
And you don't have to owe them anything. I mean, they owe you that money whether a dollar is raised or not.
Yeah, so it can't be contingent because that's obviously makes it a commission. There's transaction fees. You have to be cautious of that, though. I've seen people try to charge these transaction fees based a percentage of the deal, but again, it looks like a commission. I think a transaction fee that's a percentage, as long as it's something small, if it's certain basis points, and you can justify that. But if it's, hey, we're charging a 5% transaction fee, well, that's just a 5% commission. Processing fees, there's people call them all sorts of things. You just have to really look, what is it? Is it contingent, and is it based on a percentage of the raise? If so, then you need to be a broker-dealer to be able to charge that.
So for the benefit of everyone who's new, there's basically 5 different flavors of crowdfunding portals. We've talked at length about Reg CF portals, Title III, which basically allows you, through the FINRA approval, to act as if you are a broker-dealer without being a licensed broker-dealer, which in exchange, you cannot represent yourself or your own deals, but you could host other third-party deals on your portal and get commissions and also equity in the deal if you negotiate it appropriately. That's the only way, without being a licensed broker-dealer, you could get commissioned on a deal. The second way you get commissions on a third-party deal or on any other deal is to be a licensed broker-dealer. You could also get commissions if you're a licensed investment advisor. So that instead of taking 3, 5, 10, 13% for broker-dealer fees, you take what's basically a 2 and 20 model where you get 2% of the capital raised per year as a management fee, and then 20% of the net. So those types all have licensing associated with them, FINRA approvals, etc. Your last 2 types, you have a direct issuer model for Reg D deals. You are the direct issuer. You are the owner of the entity that's raising the capital. You do not collect fees for raising the capital because you, by being the owner of the entity, you are the beneficiary of the capital. So a lot of our clients, CrowdEngine clients, are direct issuers for the projects they're raising capital for. And then the 5th option, which has the most or the least liability and the most freedom, is the marketing portal, which, again, you're not doing any underwriting. It's a deal you do. You are simply providing marketing services for your clientele, and you have to charge for your marketing services. So whenever there's a question about what's the business model, how do I get paid, it's always a depends of, well, which method do you plan to execute, and based on your business model, that may or may not require licensing to execute it. There's some groups that they may be direct issuers, but they'll create a marketing portal with a different entity to house those deals, just so there's a layer of insulation between their primary business. So I've seen it done a lot of different ways. Some people see the portal as a cost center. Some people see the portal as a profit center. And so there's not one universal methodology. There's not one universal commission plan or any of that type of fee structure that is across all the boards. It really goes back to, as a portal owner, how am I going to make my money? Am I going to make it by servicing these things, or by participating in these particular deals, or providing the services to raise the capital? Next question. Talking about the ability to raise capital with different offering types at the same time. So can I have a Reg D, Title II, Reg D 506C, and a Reg A Plus offering on the same deal at the same time?
So, yeah. So if it's a 506, so yes, the answer is yes. But again, you have to proceed with caution on how that's done. 506C, as long as a 506C, that allows a general solicitation. A Regulation A Plus allows you to test the waters and to market the deal. Where you have to be cautious, and basically before so say for example you filed an offering circular, you're doing a testing the waters campaign for a Reg A Plus offering, and from that you get approached by some accredited investors. They could invest in your deal. You have to make sure that, again, that they're verified as accredited investors. That's a possibility. You would have to, if you had filed an offering circular, you'd have to make sure that that offering circular is amended. Again, this is pre-approval or pre-effective date or qualification, before you to include that offering. That would be a change that you'd have to disclose. Similarly, I guess where you could get into trouble is if you're doing an advertising campaign, you're testing the waters, and you have non-accredited investors that came in and said, well, we want to invest through a 506B, or people say, well, these are our relationships. They didn't come in through any advertising. That becomes a little bit harder to prove because, it's going to be assumed that they saw whatever advertising testing the waters material. So, and which would be a general solicitation. So
it's possible to do it compliantly, but it's also very easily to do it non-compliantly if you're not careful.
Yeah, and the liability is, the cost is great. I mean, you could ruin your exemption in both cases, which would mean you're breaking the law, which also means you're a bad actor. So there's a lot of future offerings. So there's
significant negative consequences
for doing it wrong. Yeah.
So how about Reg CF and additional offering types? So there's the $1 million, $70,000 limit now for a rolling 12 months. How soon could I have another offering associated with that entity before or after the Reg CF raise?
So similarly, it's the analysis kind of applies. So doing a Reg D offering, and this happens all the time. People are, I've had it happen with several of my clients. They're in the middle of a Reg CF offering, and they said, hey, we've got, we need some cash, and we've got these investors that we've had these relationships with that want to invest, or we want to get a loan, or they're going to provide debt or whatever, debt or equity. Perfectly fine. Again, the analysis that I just used is there is a general solicitation going on, and it's going to be presumed whether they saw that or not. I mean, this is a perfect example. A client was doing a Reg CF offering. The CFO called me and said, hey, we've got this guy that wants to invest. He's, so-and-so's uncle. He doesn't even have a computer. There's no way he would have known about this offering. He just knows so-and-so and heard about it at a family reunion and wants to invest. So that's all great, but there's no way of proving that he didn't know of that general solicitation. I mean, there's just, even saying he doesn't have a computer, he just doesn't know how to work the internet, never heard of the internet, whatever it might be, it's going to be presumed that he learned about that offering.
If it's a general solicitation, that it's presumed that everyone in the world had access to it, whether it was marketed or not.
So that uncle would have to be an accredited investor and would have to be verified as an accredited investor to qualify under 506C. The second piece of that is if you're in the middle of a Reg CF offering and you raise capital, there's a strong likelihood that that capital raise would be deemed material based upon the amount of money that you're raising, the type, if it's debt or equity, if it's the class of securities that you're offering. Say for example that you do a Reg 506D and it's 506C offering at the same time you're offering preferred versus common in the CF, that would be a material change, which would require an amendment to your Form C, and any amendment and a material amendment to the Form C would require that the investors sign off on that change, which means you'd have to let them know, they'd have to sign off, they have to affirmatively approve within the 5 days, or their previous commitment is withdrawn. So those are the things to think about as you're going about this process, I guess. And then you asked the question about, well, how soon after? Say a CF raise ends, could you immediately then, say, well, wait, could you have somebody that says, hey, uncle, you're not an accredited investor, but our CF offering is going to end here on August 15th, so let's just wait till the 16th or 17th. That offering will be over, and then we'll have you do just a 506B friends and family round. Those two offerings would be integrated. They're going to look and say, well, there's a likelihood that he still learned about it. I would say you probably need to wait 90 days before, if you were going to do a 506B offering after the CF offering closed.
So you don't have to wait a year?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, what would the year be based on?
Isn't there a 12-month rolling amount of, you could only get $1 million for 12 months?
No, but what you were asking is, I love this. This is all like law school hypotheticals over and over again. But what you, I thought,
surprised how many times I take this question on a daily basis.
I thought what you were asking was, could they do like a 506 offering after the Reg CF closed?
Yes.
So you can only raise $1 million under Regulation CF on that rolling 12 months.
Gotcha.
You can raise an additionally. You could raise, if you did a 506C and raised from strictly accredited investors, that wouldn't.
Could you do 506C and a Reg CF at the same time?
Yes.
I did not know that. That's interesting.
No. Again, it's all how you market them, and I mean, there are clients that are there are people that are doing that. It's, you think about it as somebody that's designing the technology, though. How are those investors treated? We've talked about this, do they go in through separate doors on the platform, and the CF people have to go, again, the CF people all have to go through a funding portal or a broker-dealer that's been approved to do those types of offerings. The CF or the 506C guys don't, but you could have those simultaneous offerings, yeah.
Can you do a 506B and a 506C at the same time?
No.
Why not? I believe you, but that was a really quick no, and so there must be a really good answer why.
Just because of what I was just talking about.
One's general solicitation, one's for private.
So you're presuming you have a general solicitation out there, and it's going to be assumed that guy, the 506B.
What purpose would it be served?
Why? I mean, what would be the purpose of that? I think that the only purpose of that would be to try to allow some nominal or minimal number of non-accredited investors in. I mean, otherwise, I don't even know why you'd do that.
Did you study a lot in law school in your tax law?
So I took a lot of tax classes.
Okay, good. This next question is, are benefits, quote unquote, conveyed to investors taxable?
This is not tax advice, so take it for a grain. Take it.
None of this is legal advice, but
no. Are benefits? So what do they mean by benefits?
My curiosity is if they're giving out T-shirts or whatever else. If there's benefits that, like, people put incentives. If you invest, we'll do this, or invest and do that. And so they might be benefits not directly to a distribution. So if I give you a pair of shoes, or if I give you a free night stay at a hotel, whatever that benefit is.
This is so not tax advice, so sorry. But what I would say, where I would argue that is that they're not taxable because you've paid consideration for them. You invested in the company, even on like a perks based or rewards based or something like that. If you get a T-shirt, you get it, whatever. You gave something of value for it. Therefore, it's just like buying it. And I would argue that if you bought stock and it included a T-shirt or it included a whatever, say they widget that they manufacture, that wouldn't be taxable because it's part of what you purchased.
So another person, right? Besides Reg CF, is there another offering type available for non-accredited investors? If I could be so bold as to answer this for you, Marty. So, quick thing, if anyone would like a quick glance at all the guidelines, I produced a summary that compares all the guidelines, one from each other. So 506B versus 506C versus Title III versus Reg A Plus, Tier 1, Tier 2, all on one little quick cheat sheet. So if you'd like that, just email me, Brent at crowdengine.net, and I will be happy to send that to you. Many of you probably have already received it in our regular correspondence. But to answer your question directly, there are 3 offering types that you're able to participate in not being accredited. The first one would be 506B. Under the 506B guidelines, there's 35 exemptions for friends and family. The assumption is the prerequisite is you have a relationship with the issuer, pre-existing relationship with the issuer. That's why it's basically called friends and family, because usually only friends and family qualify. You could take unaccredited dollars from friends and family or people with existing relationships, up to 35 investors under 506B.
So let me interrupt.
Please do.
Now, you have to be cautious with that, though, because a 506B offering, if you have non-accredited investors, the disclosure requirements are elevated. So you basically have to provide the information that's required under Regulation D, which is financial state. There are additional disclosures that have to be provided, which are statutorily required by the regulations, as well as financial statements for the issuer. The non-accredited investors have to receive financial statements. At a minimum, they have to receive a balance sheet that's reviewed by a CPA. So that is something that people kind of gloss over. A better exemption for a non-accredited investor would be an intrastate exemption, or most states have basically your friends and family exemption, which is if you're raising, less than $1 million from less than 15 investors, and they're all within this, the state of operation of the entity. So, then that's going to most likely, almost every state has that a similar exemption for that, just called the intrastate exemption, small offering exemption or private offering exemption. So I would actually check if it's a smaller amount. I would try to qualify under an intrastate exemption if it's possible, because those are usually self-executing. You don't even need to file a Form B. You don't need to. There's no disclosure requirements. So that's just something to think about, because 506B, like Brent was saying, you can't have non-accredited investors, but the disclosure requirements are increased.
So your 2 other flavors that basically became legal these last couple of years with the new regulation, crowdfunding guidelines are A, Reg A Plus, Tier 1, Tier 2, which require each deal requires FINRA approval. So that deal will go through a 3 or 4 month process of being approved by FINRA. So FINRA and the SEC basically have determined, our government says, we are here to protect the unaccredited investor. So we're going to review every single portal and or every single deal that's public for the investors to view. So if your path to the retail investor, to the unaccredited investor, is either through the FINRA process on a Reg A Plus deal, that deal gets approved by FINRA, then you are able to raise the capital for that specific deal. So for each Reg A Plus deal, you're going to go through the FINRA process again and again for every single new deal you have.
Exactly. It's the SEC and FINRA. I mean, you're going through. FINRA is really just if you've got broker dealers involved.
The second option or third option is Reg CF Title III, where the portal is going through the FINRA process, and then you, as the issuer or entity raising the capital, just do the necessary requirements to be compliant, but you're not going through an official FINRA process, correct?
Yeah.
Marty. And so there is no way to reach retail investors without working with the SEC and FINRA outside of the exemption of the 506B.
Yeah, or an interstate.
Or interstate,
yeah.
Thank you.
Now, but
thanks for the curveball.
Yeah. Hey, anyway, but one thing to consider too with an interstate offerings is, and this is not an interstate crowdfunding. This is typically like a friends and family. So there's no general. All those will require no general solicitation. One thing to also consider is there are intrastate crowdfunding exemptions that you could fall on as well. I can't remember the number of states, but a majority of the states have intrastate crowdfunding rules now that allow you to raise money within a specific state. You don't need to.
Georgia's the best.
Yeah, from what I've heard, yeah. But, some states are more difficult than others. In fact, some states, the process to go through and to be able to be, licensed or approved to do an intrastate offering can be just as onerous as...
Yeah, having touched many of the intrastate portals and provided the technology, I could say at this point, most often, unless you're one of the easy states, and there's only a couple of them, you might as well just do a Reg CF portal and or a Reg A Plus, because you then have regional capacity. You're at the federal exemption levels, not state, and it's usually more advantageous. There's often so much nuance to a state where it has to be a state bank that holds the money and processes the money, and a state this and state that. And from an industry technology perspective, there's not the resources available to have all the things the state and local legislators have written into law. So it's difficult to execute for example, there was a state that said you had to use a state bank, but no state bank was willing to take on, open an escrow for a crowdfunding project. So while it was quote unquote legal, it was DOA because there wasn't any bank willing to play by those rules. And so while there's federal or national service providers like Fund America, Prime Trust, those weren't able to be used because they weren't in that particular state. So often you're going to be right back at Reg CF regardless. Here's a question. Company A owns IP and patents, raises money under Reg CF. Okay, got this? Company A owns patents, so they raise money. Has a wholly owned subsidiary, Company B, that will operate one of those products. Can the subsidiary raise Reg CF as well, either during or just after the Company A?
They could, but what they would do is most likely they would integrate those two offerings, so you would be capped at $1 million in a 12-month period. So yes, it's possible, yes, but you'd be limited by the amount that you could raise.
Perfect. Another question, what is the future of crowdfunding in the financial services industry, and do you see any additional regulatory shifts in the near future? So I hopefully you bought your crystal ball, yeah, and it's working, and please tell me my lottery numbers if it is. But in closing, what do you see as this? I don't know if this is the State of the Union. Let's just go future, not today. But what do you see as the future of crowdfunding? So I think in general, there's a perception it's going slower than people anticipated, and so some people are scratching their heads, going, "What to make of it?"
I think that it's still in its infancy. I know that's hard to say because we've been at this, for the Jobs Act was passed in, 5 years ago. Yeah, 2012, 5 years ago. So I think that there was a lot of early excitement, and now that we're up and going, I think it's a growing and evolving industry. I think that it will become the norm to raise money over the internet and to transact. To do these financial transactions over the internet. I have several clients, we've mentioned this before, who they're using the regulations, they're using quote-unquote crowdfunding to automate what they were already doing. They were already raising capitals, they already had their networks, they were already doing things, and now they're they're opening it up to a little bit wider net. They're using technology to automate and facilitate what they were already doing. I think you will see more and more of that. I think that as far as regulations, honestly speaking, I don't know. I mean, I think that there's a lot of chaos that's in Washington right now, and I don't know which way things are. I mean, I don't know if anyone knows which way things are going. I think that the idea under the administration is just try to push for deregulation. Things aren't going as fast as many. I think
it's what I've seen in building on what you're saying is crowdfunding has proven not to be a partisan subject, right? When you talk about crowdfunding, both sides of the aisle love it.
Yep.
And so it's not about whether this administration is going to do anything significant or the next administration, or we have to wait for some new administration to get elected. Again, there's a lot of chaos in D.C. that we don't need to necessarily talk about. But in time, over time, there will absolutely be additions and subtractions from the current guidelines, and there's going to be give and take over time, just like there is in everything.
Yeah, and you're seeing that, and there are crowdfunding. There's the fixed crowdfunding bill. There is legislation going through, and I think that it's all designed. I've commented on various comment letters, and it's all designed to fix the problems that we're having, not only with Reg CF, but with some of the other introductions through the Jobs Act. Well, I guess what I was alluding to is I think that there's, I'm uncertain when those things will actually move forward. So it's hard to say.
To me, what no one can say is the adoption rate, right? What we know is there's been, since 1934 until 2012, it was illegal for people who are raising capital to market the capital raise. And unless you knew the issuer or had a relationship with the issuer or broker-dealer that was raising capital, you were excluded from that opportunity. In the huge landslide of events, that has now been removed, where the government has given the opportunity for people to market, even including online capital raises. And that's what is considered crowdfunding, is the ability to market. Yep. What we're really talking about is the adoption rate of expertise issuers have to be able to market, and the conversion rate of investors to those marketing efforts. Because it goes back to the fundamentals, and ultimately, when you always peel back the layers of the onion of crowdfunding or online capital raising, it's an internet marketing battle. And so, yes, there's rules and specific rules that one has to follow, but really it always comes down to, why did Dapley have so much success? Is because they were really good internet marketers and they had a good product. There's a lot of other companies that with great products or great houses, great real estate, that never see the light of day because their marketing was a failure. And so whether you're a CrowdEngine client or anything else, the survival of the industry is always going to survive. We don't really talk a lot about real estate, but real estate has basically ensured that crowdfunding is here to stay because it's adopted so aggressively, and it's usually, I mean, you look at all the statistics and they've all exceeded all the projections. When they said in the first year how much is going to be crowdfunded next year, that number was shattered. Every year the number has been shattered. What's been slow to be adopted is the VC, the new startup investments. Yep. That's been the missing link, where people are going, why is this not catching on like it's caught on like real estate? We see real estate with all the success, but in the startup space, it's not having the same adoption rate. What's going on here? And usually when people talk about why is the adoption rate so slow, what's taking so long, it's not about crowdfunding in the big space. Typically, I've found it's more a discussion on seed rounds and business investing and early adoption in that way. And that has taken off slowly for a lot of reasons that we kind of talked about when we started this webinar. So, again,
but one thing. Sorry, I'm interrupting. But one thing that you saw even before Reg CF came out, though, is the number of deals that, and I'm talking equity deals, venture capital, angel deals that were getting done on websites like Seed Invest or Angels List, I mean, that has increased. That has become the norm. I mean, rather than, I remember the old days where you would have these angel forums, and and a client would go and they would go meet with Silicon Valley Angels or Park City Angels here in Utah or whoever it might be, and they would go pitch, and they would you'd have 10 investors that would all go and pitch, and then they would talk about it and stuff. That same process is happening, but it's happening online. So you're seeing dollars going in. The issue, though, is those are all 506Cs. Those are all accredited investors or 506Bs. Those are accredited investors that are doing those deals. What you haven't seen is that uptick. And most of the real estate deals, honestly, are also accredited investors. So there is that activity. What we have not seen is the non-accredited investor enter that market and with the fervor that they thought, and really the Jobs Act, all of this was designed to help those startup businesses by pairing them with the non-accredited investors. And that match has been slower. I don't know, Sarah Hanks, who with CrowdCheck, she made the comment in one of her articles that the younger generation or millennials or whatever you want to call them, she says they're spending more money on avocado toast than they are investing. So I think that was, I just don't know if that investment mindset has set in for those types of people, or the type of people that it was designed to attract. So,
yeah, and I agree. So to me, the future is bright. What I can't tell you is the timeline associated with at what point are you going to have these watershed moments in the industry where, like I said, when those watershed moments happen, if you're not already in the industry, it's too late. You can't compete with Amazon after they become the 800-pound gorilla. The time to compete with Amazon is when you're the same size as Amazon, and you're competing with them at that point. So once that watershed moment happens, most doors and windows close to that opportunity that was there the day before. When it's easy to put up a portal and all these things, when this podcast grows old, like everyone already knows all the rules, the opportunity is going to be out of the equation.
Yep.
Right, and so it's at that point you're going to be talking to the established big boys, and they'll be niche this and niche that. So I don't think the industry's ever been brighter, right? As far as what the future is, what I have a difficult time estimating is the time frame and when the mass when that first home run is going to happen. Is that first home run going to happen this month, next month, this year, next year? That's what I can't predict. When the media pushes crowdfunding, that's when the watershed will happen. But the industry hasn't given the media a great story yet. And when the industry gives the media great stories, that's when you're going to start seeing it start take off. I could tell you from a sales perspective, I have more inquiries from institutional Wall Street entities than the last several months than I ever did the first 5 years of my position. So there's bigger and bigger players, there's bigger and bigger money coming in, and people are seeing it. So I don't think that by any means it's going away. It's just a matter of the ebbs and flows of it being rolled out and being adopted as mainstream. Marty, unfortunately, we've come to the end of our time. Any closing thoughts for our wonderful listeners?
No, just appreciate joining us. Nice to be back, and look forward to talking again next month.
For everyone that is on, there will be a posting of this recording, so you don't have to worry. Our producer will get that out in the next day or two, and we'll post it online, both in the podcast form and on the CrowdEngine website. Thank you all for listening. Have a great day.